welcome back to Friday Reads, where we hope you find your next read. I'm Jill.
And I'm Julie, and we're on week 4 of picking 5-star reads that our patrons recommended this summer during summer reading. And again, we're in our construction apparel because the library is undergoing renovations, and we started yesterday packing up books. So Jill, Construction Edition Part 4, what's your first 5-star read?
My first one is Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fido. I also read this and I also gave it 5 stars, but it is a bit macabre. Winifred Noddy arrives at the Enser house prepared to play the perfect Victorian governess. She'll dutifully tutor her charges, Drusilla and Andrew, tell them bedtime stories, and only joke about eating children. But the longer Winifred spends at the estate's dreary confines, and the more she learns of the perversions and pathetic preoccupations of the Pounds family, the more trouble she has sticking to her plan. Whether creeping across the moonlit lawns in her undergarments or gently tormenting the house staff, Winifred struggles at every turn to stifle the horrid compulsions of her past until her chillingly dark imagination breaches the feeble boundary of reality on Christmas morning. So this is a Christmas story too.
Oh, gee.
Just for your pleasure.
Nothing says Christmas like Victorian Psycho.
Wielding her signature sardonic wit and penchant for gorgeously macabre, Virginia Fido returns with a vengeance with Victorian Psycho. I think this one is a 5-star read. I agree with whoever said this was.
Wow. My first pick comes from the fiction collection. It's Shonora Williams' The Wife Before. Samira Wilder has never had it easy, and when her latest lousy job goes south, things only promise to get harder until she unexpectedly meets a man who will change her life forever. Renowned pro-golfer Roland Graham is wealthy, handsome, caring, and Samira is dazzled. Best of all, he seems to understand her better than anyone before him has. And though the relationship moves a bit fast, when Roland proposes, she accepts. She even agrees to relocate to his secluded Colorado mansion. After all, there's nothing more to keep her in Miami, and the mansion clearly makes him happy. Soon they are married amid a media firestorm, and Samira can't wait to make a fresh start as the second Mrs. Graham. She settles into the mansion, blissfully happy, until she discovers long-hidden journals belonging to Roland's late wife, Melanie, who died in a tragic accident. With each dusty page, she comes to realize that perhaps it was no accident at all. That perhaps her perfect husband is not as perfect as she thought. Even as her trust in Roland begins to dwindle and a shadow falls over her marriage, she begins to fear for her own life. But she is determined to uncover the truth of Melanie's troubled last days. But even good wives should know that the truth is not always what it seems. So The Wife Before, it was published back in 2022.
Nice one. My next one is Better Than Revenge. This one is by Casey West. It was published in 2024, so it's fairly new. Looks like one of the romantic ones. When her football player boyfriend and now ex lands a podcast job she's been dreaming of, a girl takes matters into her own hands by enlisting the help of his nemesis to get revenge. 17-year-old Finley has only ever wanted to become a famous podcaster. This includes coming up with the perfect pitch to land her school's podcast team. But when her football-obsessed boyfriend, Jensen, decides to also try out and uses her idea, she's left confused and betrayed. Determined to get back at him, Finley and her friends try to find the perfect revenge scheme, but quickly discover that Jensen is almost impossible to best. Keyword, oh my. By chance, Finley discovers a knack for kicking and decides to take Jensen's spot on the football team. To help her train, she recruits Jensen's cute but conceited nemesis, Theo. Soon the two discover that their connection runs deeper than football. But Finley can't let herself get distracted, and Theo has secrets of his own. Is true love really better than perfect revenge? Better than revenge. 5-star read according to our patrons.
My next pick was a tween pick. This is actually juvenile fiction. This is The Girl Who Could Fly by Victoria Forrester, and this was published back in 2008. You can't keep a good girl down unless you use the proper methods. Piper McCloud can fly. Just like that, easy as pie. Sure, she hasn't mastered reverse propulsion, and her loops are kind of sloppy, but she's real good at loop-the-loops. Problem is, the good folk of Lowland County are afraid of Piper. And her ma is at wit's end, so it seems only fitting that she leaves her parents' farm to attend a top-secret, maximum security school for kids with exceptional abilities. School is great at first with a bunch of new friends whose skills range from super strength to super genius, plus all the homemade apple pie she can eat. But Piper is special, even among the special, and there are consequences. Consequences too dire to talk about, too crazy to consider, and too dangerous to ignore. At turns exhilarating and terrifying, the author's debut novel is an unforgettable story of defiance and courage about an irrepressible heroine who can, who will, and who must fly. And this is actually the first book in the Piper McCloud series, which has 3 books. The second book is The Boy Who Knew Everything, and the third is The Girl Who Fell Out of the Sky. So we thank our tween who recommended this book.
Awesome. I love a good tween read. So my next one is from the nonfiction section. This is Between Two Kingdoms, a memoir of a life interrupted by Salika Joad. I hope you can hear us around all the construction around us. We're troopers, still doing this. A searing, deeply moving memoir of illness and recovery that traces one young woman's journey from diagnosis to remission and ultimately the road trip of healing and self-discovery. In the summer after graduating from college, Salika Joad was prepared, as they say in commencement speeches, to enter the real world. She had fallen in love and moved to Paris to pursue her dream of becoming a war correspondent. The real world she found, however, could take her into a very different kind of conflict zone. It started with an itch. First on her feet, then her legs, like 1,000 invisible mosquito bites. Next came exhaustion and the 6-hour naps that only deepened her fatigue. Then a trip to the doctor at a few weeks shy of her 23rd birthday, a diagnosis, leukemia, with 35% chance of survival. Just like that, the life she imagined herself had gone up in flames. By the time Joad flew home to New York, she had lost her job, her apartment, and her independence. She would spend much of the next 4 years in a hospital bed fighting for her life and chronicling the saga on a column for the New York Times. When Joad finally walked out of the cancer ward after 3.5 years of chemo, a clinical trial and a bone marrow transplant, she was, according to doctors, cured. But she would soon learn a cure is not where the work of healing ends. It's where it begins. I have to turn the page. I know our secrets. 1,500 days in desperate pursuit of one goal, to survive. And now that she's done so, she realized that she had no idea how to live. How would she re-enter the world and live again? How could she reclaim what had been lost? Joad embarked with her new best friend Oscar, a scruffy terror mutt, on a 100-day, 15,000-mile road trip across the country. She set out to meet some strangers who had written her during her years in the hospital. A teenage girl in Florida also recovering from cancer. A teacher in California grieving the death of her son. A death row inmate in Texas who spent her own years confined to a room. What she learned on this trip was that the divide between sick and well is porous, that the vast majority of us will travel back and forth between these realms throughout our lives. Between Two Kingdoms is a profound chronicle of survivorship and a fierce, tender, and inspiring exploration of what it means to begin again. So, Between Two Kingdoms, kind of a different story.
Good pick from someone.
Yes.
My third pick is Hate by Tate James. I'll put my finger so you can see the author. This was published back in 2020. Madison Kate Danvers was murdered tonight. Those words changed my life, and not for the better. They were wrong, of course. I wasn't dead, but I was set up. After being charged with a string of offenses and made an example of by my political-minded father, I'm eventually released back into Shadow Grove with one thing on my mind. Title of the book, Hate. Someone is going to pay for derailing my carefully laid out future. Someone is going to catch the full force of my hate. How very convenient that someone just moved into the bedroom down the hall from me. Archer Diath and his boys messed with the wrong girl, and they're about to learn just how cold Madison Kate's hate can run. This book was described as a full-length, mature college, new adult romance with enemies to lovers, love-hate themes. It's a reverse harem novel, meaning the main character has more than one love. This is the first book in the Madison Kate series, which does have 4 additional books. Not familiar with this author.
No, me neither.
That was a 5-star pick.
So this one you probably are familiar with. I know you are.
Oh, loved it.
The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. We have talked about this book before, and it's worth it. And it made somebody's 5-star list, probably more than one. A gripping historical mystery inspired by the life and diary of Martha Ballard, a renowned 18th century midwife who defied the legal system, and wrote herself into American history. May 1879, when the Kennebec River freezes, entombing a man in ice, Martha Ballard is summoned to examine the body and determine the cause of death. As a midwife and healer, she is privy to much of what goes on behind closed doors in Hallowell. Her diary is a record of every birth and death, crime and debacle that unfolds in the close-knit community. Months earlier, Martha documented the details of alleged rape committed by two of the town's most respected gentlemen, one of whom has now been found dead in the ice. But when a local physician undermines her conclusion, declaring the death to be an accident, Martha is forced to investigate the shocking murder on her own. Over the course of one winter, as the trial nears and whispers and prejudice mount, Martha doggedly pursues the truth. Her diary soon lands in the center of the scandal, implicating those she loves and compelling Martha to decide where her own loyalties lie. Clever, layered, and subversive, Ariel Lawhon's newest offering introduces an unsung heroine who refused to accept anything less than justice at a time when women were considered best seen and not heard. The Frozen River is a thrilling, tense, and tender story about a remarkable woman who left an unparalleled legacy that remains nearly forgotten to this day. So
I like that book a lot.
good, important book.
The fourth pick is also an older book. This was back from 2013. This was Christina Baker Klein's The Orphan Train. Nearly 18, Molly Eyre knows she has one last chance. Just months from aging out of the child welfare system and close to being kicked out of her foster home, a community service position helping an elderly woman clean out her house is the only thing keeping her out of juvie or worse. Vivian Daly has lived a quiet life on the coast of Maine, but in her attic, hidden in trunks, are vestiges of a turbulent past. As she helps Vivian sort through her possessions and memories, Molly discovers that she and Vivian aren't as different as they seem to be. A young Irish immigrant orphaned in New York City, Vivian was put on a train to the Midwest with hundreds of other children whose destinies would be determined by luck and chance. The closer Molly grows to Vivian, the more she discovers parallels to her own life. A Penobscot Indian, she too is an outsider being raised by strangers, and she too has unanswered questions about her past. As her emotional barriers begin to crumble, Molly discovers that she has the power to help Vivian find answers to mysteries that have haunted her for her entire life. Answers that will ultimately free them both. Rich in detail and epic in scope, this book is a powerful novel of upheaval and resilience, of second chances, and of unexpected friendship, and of the secrets we carry that keep us from finding out who we are. I read this many years ago, and I would have rated that a 5-star book. So, Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein.
Great choice. We have some great readers. This one you're probably familiar with too, and it's also worth mentioning as a 5-star read. Gentleman in Moscow by Amar Tolls. This was published in 2016. The mega bestseller with more than 2 million readers, and now Paramount and Showtime series starring Ewan McGregor as Count Alexander Rostov. So if you like a series that goes with something, there you go. From the #1 New York Times best-selling author of The Lincoln Highway and the Rules of Civility, a beautiful, transporting novel about a man who ordered to spend the rest of his life inside a luxury hotel. In 1922, Count Alexander Rostov is deemed an unrepentant aristocrat by Bolshevik tribunal and is sentenced to house arrest in the Metropole, a grand hotel across the street from the Kremlin. Rostov, an indomitable man of rouge and wit, has never worked a day in his life and now must live in an attic room while some of the most tumultuous decades of Russian history are unfolding outside the hotel room doors. Unexpectedly, his reduced circumstances provide him entry into a much larger world of emotional discovery. Brimming with humor, a glittering cast of characters, and one beautifully rendered scene after another, this singular novel casts a spell as it relates to the Count's endeavor to gain deeper understanding of what it means to be a man of purpose. So, Gentleman in Moscow.
Would definitely give that one 5 stars too. That's one of my favorite books. My last pick is a ghost story. This is Jennifer McMahon's The Invited. This was published back in 2019. It's a chilling ghost story with a twist. The New York Times bestselling author of The Winter People returns to the woods of Vermont to tell the story of a husband and wife who don't simply move into a haunted house. They start building one from scratch without knowing it until it's too late. In 1924, a young mother, Hattie Breckenridge, is hanged from a tree in her yard by the town mob, accused of a crime that was actually committed by Hattie's daughter. Nearly a century later, a young married couple, Helen and Nate, abandon the comforts of suburbia to begin the ultimate aspirational do-it-yourself project, building the house of their dreams on the same 44 acres of rural land where Hattie once lived. When they discover that this charming property has a dark and violent past, Helen, a former history teacher, becomes consumed about discovering Hattie's story and the tragic legend of all her descendants. 3 generations of Breckenridge women, each of whom died amid suspicion and who seem to still be seeking something elusive and dangerous in the present day.
Oh, that looks like a good one.
I know, another good 5-star pick from our Day Trends.
We thank you so much for giving us these 5-star picks. I know you've been enjoying them, and we've been enjoying reading and finding out what you like reading. So
Yeah, my to-be-read list is getting longer.
Sure is.
Jill and I thank you for watching our videos. You can find us on the Kimberly Public Library website, YouTube channel, Facebook page. And bear with us while we're under construction. We'll see you next week in our temporary digs in the Evergreen Room, open for browsing noon till 6 starting Monday. Thanks for watching. Bye.